Welcome to the SOULFAM podcast. On today's fabulous episode, we welcome Jensen Smith. You can find her on Instagram at Readings with Jensen.
Readings with Jensen, yeah, with an O-N.
Jensen is a psychic medium. She works with a lot of clients in a very beautiful and gorgeous way to call their relatives, their loved ones in to share messages. She also has the beautiful connection with animals and with nature in general, and we're going to get into that deeply in this interview. She is a creative. She is an actor, and she is a filmmaker. And we're going to talk about that also because her film, I'm going to mispronounce it,
Hoodafolk?
which is about hidden people, and we're going to talk about that also. So I'm super excited to talk with Jensen. I felt like we really need some lifting and some joy and some fun right now, and I just have this feeling she's going to bring a little bit of that to us today. So thank you for joining us.
Thank you for having me, and same for you. You also bring a lot of joy.
Oh, thanks. That's kind of the point. We want this to be a community. We want people to feel better and to enjoy their spiritual journey, which you seem to really be committed to with your clients.
Yeah, and I feel like I'm finally starting to enjoy my own spiritual journey, which is a relief. It was kind of a hot mess there for a while, and now I feel like, okay, I know who I am-ish, and I have a practice, and I do what I do. Yeah, again, I love to share that with my clients because, I don't know, when you can wipe off the windshield for someone psychically and say, look, you're seeing this little piece of the windshield, but there are a gazillion other options for you on either side. It's incredibly freeing. And then especially so if I happen to bring up something that they've been secretly thinking about but never told anyone about, and then something about that dynamic can rush in a bunch of confidence in how people take steps towards where they're meant to go. So that's what I try to do.
It's fascinating. So tell me, you've always felt this way as a child, correct?
Yeah.
And then it really started going full force for you after a near-death experience. Is that correct?
Yeah.
Can you
Yeah.
share that?
Absolutely. Which piece do you want first? Kid, near
The
death?
kid, I think that's interesting because I feel a lot of people in the spiritual community really have these sort of instincts when we're kids. I certainly did as a little kid, would see feelings from relatives and ask questions of my mom, like, why is Aunt Sally sad?
Yeah.
And then because I could feel the feelings, I'm curious if that was your experience as a child.
Yeah. Yeah, I always just felt so. I grew up in a very Midwestern town. So I grew up in Racine, Wisconsin, which I always think is kind of funny because Racine in French means root. My roots are literally a root, you know? I actually one time had a really funny dream where I was in my friend's old house and there was a table, there was some sort of event going on. And on the table were a bunch of tarot cards. In my dream, I had the ability to sort of direct it a little bit, you know? And so I said, can you show me what I'm supposed to be working on? And a card flipped over and it said roots on it. And I was like, huh? And I went across the room and I asked another woman if she could explain it to me. And she said, honey, you're from the roots, which feels like my hometown, but also like there's something about me that is interconnected with nature and that I can't ignore that.
Right.
But anyway, as you can see already, I have ADHD. But
This is another thing. You don't have ADHD. I think people who are highly spiritual and have a high frequency, it's like we get a lot of information very quickly and it all sort of interweaves with other things where it's all sort of connected.
Yes. But yeah, so basically, you know, so I grew up in this factory town, and when I was in elementary school, they all went overseas, like so many places across the country. But I had the good luck of being able to play outside all the time. Our front yard was a ravine. Across the street was a ravine that I could cross through to get to other neighborhoods. I decorated trees because I was obsessed with Pier 1. Played the cello. I did plays. So a lot of chances to have freedom, I would say. And then the first spirit encounter I can remember was probably around age 3. I remember we were at my grandma's house in Minnesota, and I've always been someone who's woken up in the middle of the night, but it was especially an issue when I was little, my poor parents. But I woke up in the middle of the night. This time I didn't call for them because I was frozen in fear because there was a tall figure standing in the doorway, and he was tall and thin and quite elderly. And I remember being absolutely terrified. And he was a little bit translucent. So I knew there was something different about him, but I didn't know what that was at that age. So I just hoped he would go away. I think I eventually fell back asleep. And the next morning I told my mom, and she was like, no, it was just a dream, honey. Like, don't worry about it. But it didn't feel like a dream to me. And I went up the stairs to use the upstairs bathroom. And on the way, something just stopped me. And I turned, and there was a black and white photo of the exact same man. And he turned out to be my great grandpa. And he just happened to have kind of a spooky appearance. He was
Right.
really,
I'm sure at 3, that seems spooky.
it was really spooky, but also in real life, he was just like really thin and had kind of a gaunt vibe. So I don't think he meant it, I don't think he
Right.
meant to scare me, but I actually kind of resemble him a lot because I have the same coloring, like same hair, same build. Like anyway, we have a lot in common. I've later found out, but it felt to me like spirit helping me as a child say it wasn't a dream. You saw someone. I didn't really have anyone to share that with, but like it planted a seed, so to speak. Yeah. And I also had, growing up, I would wake up at home as well. And every single night, I would hear somebody walking on gravel past my window, and no one could make sense of it. Cause again, that wasn't exactly a public sidewalk. Years later, my niece was home staying in my old bedroom. She woke up at the exact same time, heard the exact same thing, and said the exact same thing to my mom, at which point she went, oh, okay, now I believe you.
Oh my gosh. How many
It was
years
really
later?
bad. Like,
How many years later?
she totally has abilities. And yeah, I also had church was kind of an interesting space for me because I think I walked into it with my psychic boundaries down. I didn't know what those were at the time, but I so badly wanted to understand and believe in things the way my family did. But I would get pulled out of the message because there was so much happening around me. I mean, I would see ushers who had passed, like walking up and down the side aisles, widows sitting with their deceased husbands, like sort of things like flying up above that I now think were probably angels. And then as I got older, I kind of got into trouble because when I was, especially in the confirmation years, you're supposed to be like talking things out and learning about the Bible. And then I would get these questions that felt like I was going to, like I couldn't hold them in, which now I know those are messages, but,
Questions like what?
about, well, like sexuality. Like I would
Oh,
ask,
interesting.
like one time I asked somebody, I was at their house, we were supposed to do like a private hang with a church mentor or something. So I was having lunch over there, and, I just all of a sudden said, I was like, what do you think about being gay? And then the guy just like froze. He's like totally froze. And he got really angry. And he was like, men and women go together for a reason. And it's like a round peg in a round hole. And he starts going off. And then a bird flew in through the window. And he immediately started screaming. He was terrified. And his wife like actually has bird phobia. So she was underneath the table shaking. And I had
Oh my gosh.
it was nuts. It was like spirit was like, and it ran in. And so I had touched on something there for them, like, I don't know. There must have been some sort of fluidity that was being pushed down would be my psychic hunch, but that's, obviously for them to say. But I just ran and I got a pillowcase because I had finches when I was little, and I caught the bird, and then I released her, and then they released me back home. So
I bet they did. Poor daughter. How dare she? I mean, and you're right at that age during confirmation at like 14, 15, when like those kind of
yeah.
questions are really coming up. So
It was so
that's
interesting. I was like, I
interesting.
just couldn't believe that God would think there was anything wrong with that. And my church was pretty open generally. It's just, it wasn't to the point where like people felt like they could be open. So they weren't open enough, actually, now that I say that. But like, I just wanted to know why, Yeah.
Really interesting. So let's talk about your near-death experience and move forward a little bit, because that was more in your 20s. Is that correct?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. So I was coming back from a cousin's wedding in Minnesota. Certainly where everything happens. And the plan was to we were driving to Racine, and we were going to drop my grandma off in Madison. All these Midwestern things that we do. Anyway, so I climbed into the back seat with her, and I remember feeling quite anxious because I don't know why. I was just like, something doesn't feel right to me. So we started driving. My parents were in the front seat. We were in the back. And I noticed about an hour in that she was tired. And so I asked her if she wanted to take a nap, and she was like, oh, okay. So I propped her up, and then I was like, God, it's not enough, is it? It was that same kind of like angsty feeling before I have a message to give. And so I said, I wish I had another pillow for you. And she said, well, isn't that funny? Because I randomly packed a second pillow. And I was like, oh, great. So I prop her up some more. Still didn't feel like enough. So I decided to do a meditation from this book I'd been reading about psychic self-defense. Because even before the near-death experience, I was like, there is something either wrong with me or different about me. I was like, I don't understand what's happening to me. And in it, they described sending sort of like blue light to protect someone, and then you send white light down the middle to ground them. And if usually you have to ask for permission, but if they're very young or very old, you can just kind of send it. And she was 92, so I figured it was okay. And yeah, so I started to send this to her, and all of a sudden, this overwhelming sense of peace came over me. And time stopped, like, completely. And it turned out my dad had lost control of the car. And we were on the major east-west highway in Wisconsin, which is I-94. And we were driving. We went across all 3 lanes towards the guardrail where a ditch is. And I'd actually gotten into an accident there when I was 2, headed to that great grandpa's funeral. This is like a precarious zone for me on the way back from Minnesota. But even though we were, barreling towards the guardrail, it just felt like there was it felt like time wasn't a thing. There was just like nothing but time. And I saw a white light, and I felt us start to lift off. And I felt like, I need to say something. And so I said to whoever I was talking to, I didn't see someone in particular. I just knew someone was there. And I said, if it's my time, that's okay. But if possible, there is more I'd like to do. Yeah. And then the next thing I knew, I came to in the ditch, and somehow we'd like zigzagged in weird ways and hadn't rolled over. Because in the prior accident, we'd rolled over many times, and it was like really sketchy, not good. And we were pretty much okay. The car was totaled. We stopped the highways in both directions. But yeah, we made it through, but it changed me dramatically. And my grandma and I looked at each other and we said, the second pillow. I was like, oh my God, grandma. Oh my God, the second pillow. But yeah, after that, everything kind of exploded. Like I was getting better. I was seeing spirits at a faster rate. I was having nosebleeds, even though it was the summer and it wasn't dry out on the East Coast. I was getting physical symptoms that TV characters were having the scene before they would have them. That felt nuts. I was like, this has got to stop. Like I remember feeling like I had contractions one time, and I was like, I don't know what this is. Like it was bad. But then I was doing laundry one night, and I ran into a neighbor, and I must have made some comment, some random witchy sounding comment to her. And she just said, I knew it. I knew you were psychic. I'm psychic, and my special skill is spotting other psychics. So she gave me big pushes to start developing this, which gave me more peace than any therapy ever has.
Wow.
I was like, these are my people.
Right.
Yeah.
That's beautiful.
Thank you.
That's beautiful.
Yeah.
I think when we're going through these spiritual awakenings or claiming our gifts or understanding, it all feels weird. It's like, well, I just saw my brother-in-law's heart explode in a dream. What does that mean? And then the next morning he's gone. Yeah. So you start to question everything. Like, what was that? And the feelings, the physical symptoms that we experienced, as I was saying to you earlier, when we started this podcast, it was in part because Lexi Sturmer-Solden, who's one of the founders of this podcast, and I were both experiencing a lot of ascension symptoms, which include a lot of physical experiences.
Yeah.
So your contractions and just it all makes sense now. Did you then feel both sort of affirmed in your understanding of spirituality and then also just like, I'm okay?
Yeah, I felt very relieved that I wasn't crazy. When I was a kid, I would hear voices, and I told my mom, and she looked kind of scared. And then I happened to just turn on a 60 Minutes, like the basement TV. There's always like a basement TV. So I was like, I turned it on, and like 60 Minutes was on. They were like, schizophrenia. And I was like, oh, fuck me. I did not tell anyone, So I felt incredibly relieved. I was like, oh, okay, this is just how I am. And that's okay. Right. And then it was like, okay, now how can I use this to help other people? because
Right.
I'd always felt so alone in my sensitivity and I felt kind of different from others. And I was like, why is it overwhelming for me to go to a sleepover, but it's not overwhelming for other people? It's like, well, I can't sleep in a room with 10 other people feeling things at the same time. I'm going to feel it all, especially when you don't have boundaries built up yet. Like, yeah. Did you also feel relief?
Yes and no. I think I'm still working through that.
Yeah. Yeah.
I
Totally.
find you have to be careful who you talk to or share with, because I think most people actually feel these kinds of things in some way, sense, or form, but they doubt their intuition or they doubt their physical feelings even. So I'm just still at this point cautious of who I share with, even though lots of people know I have a podcast about spirituality and consciousness. Yet I think that it's still like there's we're all awakening. We're all sort of
Yeah.
like admitting it or gravitating to it or finding that we're affirmed in these dimensions and in this reality. But there's still a tendency to want to sort of believe in the matrix or believe in the 3D, which it's obviously we live on Earth. That
Right.
is a
Right.
third dimension. It's still like coming into play. And as you know, in your spiritual consciousness, as you awaken, you just keep awakening.
Yeah.
So it
Yeah.
keeps
There's like,
growing.
you get comfortable with one layer and then another one starts to come off. And it's, yeah,
It's a whole
100%.
experience. So let's talk about how you share with your clients and how you kind of came to have clients, get to know them. And did the mediumship work come first, or was that just in doing some psychic readings that kind of came up?
They both kind of have always come for me at the same time. Like there's an aspect of both usually. I mean, I always ask people if they're comfortable with getting messages from the other side, and some
Mm-hmm.
people aren't, but they start chiming in at some point. Like all the all aunts and uncles and especially grandmas usually have an opinion on stuff. So, but yeah, I kind of just like made a Yelp page back in the day, back when we were still using Yelp more than Google. And made some business cards and kind of spread the word. And my husband, who was just my boyfriend at the time, was really supportive of it.
Oh, good.
And so he was like, you should go see Jensen. And then he was working at this Irish bar. And so all these like Irish people living in New York were like, I don't know, but whatever. And then they'd sit down and we'd do a reading. It was so fun. And then word just kind of spread, to be honest. Like, eventually made an Instagram and yeah.
That's super cool. So when they come to you, do you do a lot of clairvoyant work? Do you work with tarot? How do you sort of connect?
I see what you're saying. So I don't use cards. I just tune into their aura.
Mm-hmm.
And then that sort of is my gateway in. So I just take a second and I just sort of like ask for permission to see. And then I ask their guides to show me what is for their highest good. And
Mm.
I also ask them to think of some questions ahead of time because that helps sort of wake them up to bring in different things, And also sometimes just as I'm writing down questions, it'll just start. Like it'll just in the middle, I'll be like, oh, Chicago, and I'll write it down, like,
Hmm.
or like Montana, do the trip. Like it'll just kind of come out as I'm jotting down. And, usually I'm getting questions about like, should I stay at my job or should I not? Or how can I push so-and-so to move it to the next level romantically, blah, 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 And then the reason I jot them all down on purpose is at once is because they don't come in chronological order.
Mm-hmm.
And so as I'm channeling, they'll kind of go around, and I often say it's like putting a puzzle piece together on a table, and we like interpret the messages together because sometimes things will be really specific, like
Mm-hmm.
don't change your contacts brand, and they're like, got it, good. And then other times it'll be like, man, why do I feel like I have this like musty smelling coat from the basement and I feel guilty about throwing it away? And they're like, oh, because I got my cousin's coat and it was in my grandma's basement. It smelled musty. And then I didn't want to throw it away. And actually, that's exactly how I'm feeling right now at work. I need to just say what I need to do and throw the shit away. So it'll like
Huh.
sometimes it'll use the past to answer a question.
Interesting.
Mhm.
It's
And then
interesting.
during all of that, people tend to come through.
I
Yeah.
see. I
And
see.
sometimes they'll want to focus more on that, which is totally fine.
So when they ask you a question, it's about my love life, or it's about my destiny, or it's about a project,
Mhm.
or that sort of thing. How do you tune in? And because I feel like this is something people want to do more, but it's still a challenge. It's still a
Mhm.
challenge to find that quiet space within yourself.
Yeah. Yeah. So Okay, so I just sort of like close my eyes for a second and I wait I wait and then something will pop up and it's a lot lighter than how my thoughts feel.
Oh.
So like if I'm thinking like, God, I gotta go to Rite Aid later. Had some bad experiences with Rite Aid diapers and my son, and I'm like, it's gonna explode on his butt again and whatever. And then so it's like if it feels like that, I'm like, no. But when it comes in as a message, it'll be lighter. And oftentimes it's really fast. And so I feel like
Right.
that's one thing for people to remember is that it's not going to be, I think there's a misconception about psychics and psychic mediums that we'll know the full picture completely all at once, but it might
Mhm.
be a piece of a person. So a father who is on the other side who loved to fix cars. So I might get the smell of the garage and gas and like see his hands and that he uses his hands for work before I see his face or get a name. And then I'll get a feeling of a relationship. And so I'll bring that up. And then it's very helpful for the people I'm reading to be very open and kind of try it on and just tell me if something comes to mind and that's okay, you know? And
Hmm.
then it'll kind of start coming in. And so, yeah, that's why the mediumship work doesn't feel that different than psychic work. Cause,
Right.
yeah, so like with somebody who's like thinking about a new job and I'm looking at it and I'm like, I know you want to work remotely, but I'm seeing a building with all glass windows. Does that track with what you've been applying for? And they're like, actually, there is a place with all glass windows, and then I'll go further in. I'm like, okay, I'm on the
Right.
right track. Let me go further in, and then I'll go in, and I'm kind of looking, and I'm looking, and I'm looking. I'm like, somebody named Jeff who's really chill. He's got the down low on how to split the week from work from home and working there, and then that can put them at ease. So it's really like Spirit is really trying to help people find the right fit for themselves, meet
That's
the
really
needs that they
interesting.
have. Does that make sense?
Yeah, that makes complete sense, and you sorta enter that dimension with them.
Yeah.
So it's as though you're walking through it with them.
Yeah, yeah, because I feel like I'm inside their bodies. That's
Fascinating. That's
yeah,
fascinating. Do
it's
you
really
ever feel like you have to shake that off afterwards?
yeah, sometimes I'll feel like them after or, "Oh, this was so weird." One time I was giving a reading for this woman and was it a woman? No, it was a man. It doesn't matter. Anyway, I was tuning into his friend who had crossed over,
Mhm.
and it can be helpful to see a photo where I can see their eyes because eyes, like, truly are the window to the soul. So
Mhm.
anyway, sometimes they'll just come in naturally, but if you wanna kinda kickstart it, that's a nice, like, roundabout or workaround,
Mhm.
which other people can do too if you wanna try that. But yeah, so I was looking at her, and then all of a sudden, a bunch started coming through. I don't remember what it was. And I was on camera because a friend of mine was working on a documentary. And so they like filmed the picture of the woman, and then they filmed me, and my face looked different for a little while. For like 20 seconds,
Wow.
I had a different face. So that was really crazy.
So did you
Really,
fit you take on her face
I
then,
took
or
on her face for a second. It was so weird. I didn't know that that happened before. I'd only seen it one time. I saw it with my aunt. We were burying my great aunt in Texas. We like took a trip down there, and she was standing at a grave, and I was looking at her with another aunt. So many aunts. And anyway, and we were looking at her, and she was reading the grave, and her face changed for like a whole minute, and we both went. We just kind of froze. I was like, "Did you see that? Yeah. Did you see that? Yeah." And we were like, "What?"
so
And then we
she
went,
took on the deceased aunt's face?
I don't know whose face it was, but it wasn't her face because it didn't look like Aunt Loie. It looked like somebody else, but her face completely
Huh.
changed. That little town of Texas was also a very awakening experience for me
Oh,
with
cool.
mediumship because I got a lot. I had just got flooded with relatives telling me stuff and people that I'd
Oh,
never
how
met who were like
interesting.
2 to 3 generations before me.
Wow.
I got a lot of information. There was this
They're
one
like, "Jensen's here, we're showing up. It's a
yeah,
party."
yeah, yeah. It was really beautiful. I was like, "Oh, this is so cool." Yeah,
And what I just curious, what little town was it?
it's called Cranfill's Gap, Texas. I actually have a series that I wrote about it because I just think it's
Oh,
such a cute little town. It's this like little Norwegian American town, and I'm still related to almost everybody who lives there.
no way.
Yeah, it's on my mom's dad's side of the family, and uh, it's just yeah. Like I walked in, so there's this church that they call the Rock Church, and they built it
Huh.
because it's so dry there, and so they kind of built it with like rocks nearby.
Mhm.
And I just walked in, and I all of a sudden I felt like I was getting married, but I was a lot shorter than I am and I had much bigger boobs than I do. And I was like, huh, that's interesting. Somebody's coming through. And then I looked up and I could tell that the man at the end of the aisle was quite a bit older than I was, but it was the match everyone had agreed on. And he seemed nice, but I didn't really know him. And I just wanted to play the piano next to him. I just kept on thinking, I want to play the piano. I want to play the piano. I want to play the piano. So finally I was like, Mom. And she was like, what? I was like, did somebody get married here? She's like, of course, her whole family lived here. I was like, no, I'm talking about like something really significant about a significant marriage. She's like, oh yeah, your great grandma, great grandpa were the first couple to get married here. I was like, okay, now we're talking. And then I found a photo of her with like when she'd had a bunch of kids. I think they were like 5 or 6, and they were all holding instruments, and she taught them how to play various instruments.
Wow.
I just got goosebumps. I think she came through to show me what that was. And then it was so weird because we stopped at a coffee shop. I don't know why. I mean, I guess coffee. And there was a woman there who turned out to be another distant second, a third, whatever cousin. And she was shorter than I am and had kind of bigger boobs. I don't know why I keep talking about boobs, but she gave me a hug and it was like I hugged, like it felt like the lady that I felt like before. And I was like, that must be our shared great.
Right. That's really interesting. And you play the cello.
Yeah.
So there's that
totally.
musical
Maybe it's
connection.
From her. I never
Right.
thought about that.
So interesting. Fascinating. So let's talk a little bit about boundaries, because I feel like this happens when we're dealing with those who have passed, or we're dealing with our spirit guides or our team. It's like, okay, wait. Hold on a minute. Maybe some of you are good for me. Maybe you're not. Maybe you really haven't awakened yet. Or maybe I'm channeling something and they hang around. Do you have a little conversation about spiritual boundaries?
When I'm done with the client, I say, I'm saying goodnight to everyone now. I'm saying goodbye to everyone. And sometimes I kind of like knock things. There's something about like, I don't know, sound and like hitting something like, okay, thank you so much. I'm sending it back. Like something about a clap feels good. I also find that helps with if I've been around someone and I've inadvertently soaked up what they're dealing with, I'll sort of like clap and say, I'm sending it back to you. And I do love to deal with this. I'm sending it back to you. That helps. But I have had some kind of tricky ones follow me around. And then you just do it again.
Some tricky ones following your event. They didn't really listen.
They weren't
get the message.
Or they were like, I've gotten hit on by people on the other side before. And I'm like, you're hitting on me and you're dead.
Funny. Okay. So if anybody's I understand that completely and affirm that myself. And I've had other people, it's happened to them as well when they're traveling.
Yeah. They never give up. These old guys. Anyway, it was so funny. I was like, yeah,
and we mean old. We mean like centuries.
Hundreds of years old. They still think they have a chance. That's so funny. Yeah, I definitely have to be careful with boundaries, but there was one that like really stands out to me, which was, so last summer I was running an errand. It was like a Sunday night and I was like, oh, this is my only time to do it. And so I ran into the city, because I'm in Queens. I was going to Midtown West. And anyway, so just like coming home, none of the trains were running normally because it was a weekend. And so I finally found a train that was near-ish to my house, and I got lucky and I got a seat. And as I sat down, I felt someone like sit down into me, like in my body. And I was like, I was like, oh, I wasn't thinking about it. I was tired, so my boundaries weren't as strong. I was like, oh, how do I shake this off? But I was just like so determined to get home, get to bed. I went to bed, not thinking about it. And then I fell asleep and I felt myself getting pulled out of my dream, like an astral travel dream. And there was a woman taking me with her, and she was scared. So she didn't feel scary. She just felt scared, but I was still uncomfortable. But I went with her and she took me right back to where I'd been in the city, but it was 1980s New York. A lot of drugs, gangs, but also like this sort of like raw potential. And she pulled me down the street to an old car that looked like she was living in it. And we went inside of it, and I sat on the I sat on the driver's side of the seat. She sat on the passenger side of the seat. And then a steering wheel appeared in front of her for a minute. And I remember thinking, okay, I wonder if you were British and moved here. And just as I was kind of like making that connection I was sort of like deciphering it as I would for a client, like while I was in the dream with her. Like she like needed my help, and I was like, okay. And then as soon as the steering wheel disappeared, a truck started coming towards us at a really fast pace and it hit her head on and she just didn't move and it sliced like part. I mean, it was horrible. And at that point, I managed to pull myself back out. But I knew I had a situation on my hands because she was still there. And so, the next day I was like, talk to me, talk to me, talk to me. But she was kind of quiet and nervous. And I was like, okay, you're only like 19. You're 19. You're a baby. And then I put my son to bed and I lit a candle and I asked my guides to open up an entrance to the other side because I was like, it's time to cross. But she was still scared. And so she kind of showed me this boyfriend, and I think she was waiting for this boyfriend still. And I said, I'm really sorry, honey. He's not coming back, And then the weirdest thing happened. I felt a healthy version of her stand on my right. And she like kind of peeked out and looked and almost like remembered herself. And that kind of pulled her a little forwards. And then some momentum started happening or some bells must have been ringing on the other side. Cause then I started hearing like British accent and saying like, come here, come here. Like I could hear them like saying, come, come. And so she slowly started walking towards her healthy self and the candle. And then it was kind of intense because she got real close to me and then they merged and she went poof. And
wow. That's intense.
it was really intense.
That's intense. But you helped her pass on because sometimes with a sudden death or even a suicide, they sort of get stuck. The soul sort of gets stuck. It doesn't want to move on to the next dimension, as you said, because there's fear of the next dimension. I mean, she's obviously gone through an enormous amount of trauma right there. Oh, heck, wasn't really planning on taking an exit at this point in my life. So she's waiting for the boyfriend to show up.
I was like, fuck him. Go hang out with your mom or whoever's there. Like,
right.
It felt like her parents were still alive. It felt like there was like a grandma there. And I remember sensing one other friend who had like kind of a perm. She was like, I had a perm. She had like an 80s perm. And I think something must have happened to her. And she showed me that she had crossed later from breast cancer. But like when she crossed, she was like, where is she? She was like, she was like trying to find this woman. So funny. I just got Chrissy right now. I wonder if her name was Chrissy. Goosebumps. And so I think then they kind of came and they were like, somebody's got her. I think, all right. So however it works over there, they were like, everybody come.
And welcome her.
So she's
and
not
ease
scared.
that transition. I think that's something to remember when our loved ones pass is that there's always somebody on the other side waiting.
Oh, yeah.
So there's that ease if you're in grief or if you're questioning what happens to those who pass over. The team is waiting. They're not alone. They're definitely not alone. That's beautiful.
Yeah, she was Oh, and then I forgot there was one other thing. So I have this friend that I trade voice memos with on WhatsApp. And she had reminded me that about a month before this happened, I had a dream that was like an astral travel dream again. And I lifted off and I was told I was going to a conference. And I was like, okay. And I wound up in this floor between two floors. So it was sort of like a hidden room in this space and everything was wooden and looked really natural. And we were all sitting in seats kind of independently. It almost looked like the 6 feet apart COVID seating, but I don't know, a little different. No one was speaking, but you would periodically get messages. So it was all telepathic. And then I was waiting for my message. And then finally someone said, we're going to send you one at a time so you don't get overwhelmed. And I think that what they meant was we're going to send you one soul at a time that needs help.
Like that's their plan?
I guess. I don't know.
You can help
I've had
them.
a couple other sins, not like every week. And I always say like, you guys, I'm happy to do this again. But they tend to be young women. I've had a lot of young women find me. Yeah, I had a real fucked up like late teens, early 20s. Like I had a lot of stuff happen. So I don't know if there's something about my vibration.
About that moment in your life so that you can relate to that where they're at when they moved on or tried to move on or got trapped.
Yeah.
That's really interesting. So you've sort of been chosen to do that job.
I guess. I know. I mean, it's like, I'll do what they tell me. It's better to roll with it than push against it, and it is a really, I felt so happy for her. I was just like, you do not deserve to be in this loop, Yeah.
So fascinating.
Really Yeah.
In one of your posts recently on Instagram, you talked about how there's this connection not only between those who have passed and those who are present, but
Hmm.
that there's a connection with our animals, there's a connection with nature.
Yeah.
Going back to you're from Root, Wisconsin, but
No, I love that.
is that something you're really beginning to connect with or have always connected with, like hearing the trees talk or hearing the animals talk as well?
Yeah. Okay. So I definitely have always had strong connections with plants and animals.
Mm-hmm.
I feel like I've been able to more recently understand that they're talking to me. I think I felt a warmth. It was almost like a knowing conversation versus like a message by message conversation. Just like when you know someone's feeling sad, like
Mm-hmm.
you can know that the tree's on your side. That sounds crazy. You can know that the tree sees you, you see the tree, or I could know that a tree is in distress, that kind of a thing. But it kind of would, that was kind of the extent of it. But then I actually asked Spirit to, I was like, I really want to talk to trees.
Mm-hmm.
And so pretty quickly, I was doing a message, I do this thing on once a month called the Sunday Circle, and it's a message circle.
Oh,
And it's
that's
really
that's
fun.
something you offer as a service on Zoom. Beautiful. Sunday
Yeah,
Circle.
Sunday Circle. So my mom is on the Sunday Circle, which I'm so proud of her because this is so different than how she was raised. And she's like, "Yeah, I'll do the circle." Here I am. I was like, "Ma, anything in particular?" Because I always ask people ahead of time. I'm like, happy to give you whatever message comes through, but like, if you're secretly wanting to know about one thing, just tell me, and then I'll tune into it for you.
Right.
She was like, I don't know. And I was like, okay. So I got to her and I saw this tree that I recognized because I know their house. And it was like on the edge of the property. So it wasn't exactly her tree or the neighbor's tree. It was sort of the, I don't know whose tree this is tree. And it was advocating for the tree next to it that was smaller. And I didn't know which tree it was. Like I don't remember seeing that tree. So it must be a newer one, and it said she needs another shot. And so I told my mom, and she's like, "Oh yeah, I got her some of those vitamin shots 2 years ago, but then I forgot to do it last year." And she's like, "Hmm,
She got the tree a vitamin shot.
mm-hmm.
Huh.
Yeah, like you can
To
get
help it
them."
grow.
Yeah, or like sometimes they're like, so you can tell something's off, and they just need a little whatever.
Mm-hmm.
And then the toleratory said again, "No, you must do it this year." Like he didn't. Actually, it was a woman too. She's like, she didn't want her. She didn't want my mom to forget. My mom was like, "Yeah, okay, okay, okay." But then the tolerant one continued, and she said that she really liked my mom and really
Oh,
appreciated all she's done with the yard and the different
oh.
types of plants and stuff. It was really sweet, and that they think she's fun and funny because she puts all those gnomes out and stuff.
Oh, she does. Oh, cool.
She's got all this, and Halloween, she makes it insane, but like they really like her, and yeah, it was really cool. And then another tree
So
came.
they watch her.
They watch her.
I just because we've talked a little bit about the trees talking before on this podcast, a little bit, yeah. And the messages they carry for us. What I think is really interesting is that they really have a personal relationship. I mean, they have a personal relationship with your mom, so they
100%.
must have a personal relationship with us.
Yeah, I think so for sure. Yeah, and I think they're rooting for us, and like I also feel like personally trees are a connecting point between the seen and the unseen. I feel
Mm.
like the unseen are also using them as location hubs or centers and stuff. And so they're really
Oh, you mean
important
as a portal?
as a portal or, yeah, possibly as a portal. Also, maybe for habitat.
What do you mean?
Like with fairies or elementals, like they might use it as a
Hmm.
habitat
Hmm.
alongside the birds, possibly.
Yeah, like it's
Yeah, it's a special place. Yeah, it's so special.
in your readings. Do you come across that? Have you come across it yet? Where your client, like the elementals or certain aspects of nature, come into the reading?
Yeah, I've had it one other time. So it was a woman, and the tree in her backyard started talking to me, and it said it dropped a lot of things on the ground, but it was really big, and it was really afraid that her partner was going to cut it down. And so I told her, and she said, "Oh my gosh, there is a tree." And it was in the phase where it was dropping things, and it was bugging her husband because they were just kind of all over the place, and he wanted to cut it down. And it said, "You can't. I'm home to everyone. You can't." And so he suggested,
Huh.
and that's funny because like he knew them just the way my mom's tree knew her. And he said, let him do the fire pit further down.
Oh, they were going to. They
Like
were
as a
gonna build a
compromise.
fire pit?
Well, he wasn't so into the fire pit. And so they were kind of like, he's like, I don't want to do a fire pit. She's like, well, I don't want you to cut down the tree. And then he said, listen, let him do the fire pit further down if he'll keep me. And she was like, done. Because she believes in all this stuff. But dude, I would love it if fairies or elementals want to step forward. I'm going to say it right now. They're more than welcome to chat with me. Yeah.
Amazing. Amazing. How does this play into your creative work as an actor, as a filmmaker? Where does this come into play for you?
I feel like when I'm working on, like when I'm in the middle of filming something, I'll trust the part of me. I mean, 'cause I feel like it's so interesting because, like, as actors, I feel like early on, they'll be like, oh, I want to transform and be something different. And then you have to
Mm.
drop that and be like, okay, how do I weave my own story into this and
Oh,
share it uniquely from my perspective?
right.
And then I feel like there's another place where you can go to where you're like, I'm down to use all of the above, but like mainly I want to be a channel for this character to come
Uh-huh.
through.
Mm-hmm.
And then I wonder if, then it kind of makes me think about the writer and all the different characters in the writer's lives.
Mm-hmm.
And like, then it does feel like it's a real person because we're usually writing based on something we know consciously or unconsciously, and you just kind of like let it fill in. But there is this magic, I don't know, there's always something magical that happens on set where like something doesn't work out with the location, or we got to speed up this thing, but then you end up catching something else that ends up being what you really needed to tell the whole story. And
Mm-hmm.
so kind of like
Mm-hmm.
having it really organized and planned, but leaving room for the unknown. um yeah, hopefully I'm making sense. But
You
there
are
are
making sense since I work in production in part as
okay.
well. There's sort of
Yeah.
that essence that some magic happens, and that we actually just interviewed somebody who has a new movie coming out called Touched, and he
Oh,
talked about it's about a girl who has autism, and it's not overly stated in the film. In fact, it's never stated in the film, and it's a really beautiful story. But as he was saying, things magically happened during the filming that
yeah.
isn't necessarily, you don't see it when you see the film, but it happened while they experienced it. And the crew's intention, the crew's feeling during the actual filming really made a difference in the overall results
Yeah.
of the film. And things like a tarot card would appear at the ceiling of a church that was like had somebody's name on it that was part of the crew. Weird things like that would just show them you're on the right path.
Oh, also, that is a really special crew completely working together. Like,
Right.
that was a really, oh, I have goosebumps all over. That is a really special team. Like, as a unit, I feel like they're a channel. That's,
Exactly.
yeah.
Exactly.
And that's
So
ideal, right? Like, you
that's
want the
ideal.
unit to, yeah, to be a channel and kind of understand when, oh, someone's on track with something. And I also feel like, I don't know, it's just like every set has its own culture. And if you can have it organized such that you can let people follow their intuition
Mm-hmm.
and roll a little longer, or like, let's get one more angle really quickly, then you can let spirit lead a little bit in addition to the director and the first AD who's worried about time.
Exactly. Tell us about hidden folk and whole
Oh,
folk.
yeah, Huda Folk,
Who'd have
which
folk?
is so funny because I made it with my friend Tara and I sort of birthed this baby together. And then my buddy Josh, who I've made a bunch of films with, was the DP and editor. It's funny because so it all started because Tara went to Iceland on a trip,
Oh,
and she
beautiful.
was like, Jensen, do you know about the hidden people? And I was like, a little bit, but not a lot. And then we're talking and talking and talking about the hidden people. And then one day I was on a walk, and I was like, I think I was like medium pregnant at the time. I was like, oh, just like walking down. And every once in a while in Queens, there'll be an old like Victorian house that's
Mm-hmm.
somehow still there.
Mm-hmm.
And there was a big tree in front of the Victorian house, and it stopped me in my tracks. And I just got the story. I was like, they're sisters. They've been in this house for over 500 years, or in this location for
Mm-hmm.
like over 500 years. And then I heard matriarchal society, because they have this long lifespan. You have 100 years to reproduce, but it's really rare. Like, it just kind of went boom, 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 like dropped in. And then I just love this idea of happily finding a way to live together. Like, people like different, like people who can sort of who are interdimensional and can go in and out of things
Mm.
and live peacefully or like help each other. And then I thought, God, what if there was a baby that was like a hybrid, like a half human, half basically fairy hidden person. And I was like, well, let's use my belly because that would be amazing. And so the premise of it is that, they're off like helping, and because it's sort of said that like hidden people watch us silently and we don't know that they're watching us, like we can't
Mm.
see them, but they'll sometimes silently swoop in and help. And so this woman is up in a tree, the pregnant one, and she's watching this man, and he's really, really upset because their adoption has fallen through. And then his husband walks up and she's kind of comforting them, and she's just, as an almost parent, feeling their grief. And as they walk away, because they were sort of like based in Queens, I was like, fuck it, just whatever free location we can use, we're using. That's another part of like how I
Yeah.
write is like, where can we see all
Independent
of this?
production.
Yeah. I'm like, this will be easy. We can go 2 blocks away from me on the Bree Street, blah, blah, blah. I'm also not afraid to knock on doors and be like, might it be use your kitchen for 35 minutes or probably an hour and a half, but let's say 35 minutes to 50 minutes. And so, but the pregnant one just has this feeling, I don't know what kind of baby this is. So, sort of the question of the film is like, is it a regular hidden person baby or is it a human? And they end up thinking it's more human than hidden, and so they give it to this couple, but then it kind of comes to be revealed that this baby is a combination.
Oh, that's
And
fascinating.
perhaps the connection can be in the future can be a connection between these two worlds.
Right.
But I
Love
also
it.
write what I'd like to experience, what I'd like the world to see. I love the idea of a matriarchal society. I love the idea of women not having to get their lives figured out by 34 so that they can marry someone and get pregnant in time and then have guilt about should I have another, I mean, the whole thing. Like I just, there's so much more pressure on us, I think, or anybody who's in a marginalized group. Like, but I was like, yeah, that'd be so cool to have 100 years to make up your mind about when you want to have a kid.
Huh. It would be.
Yeah.
It's a whole other discussion.
Yep.
That's fascinating. Often when we're experiencing these sorts of things, there is a boundary that sometimes tends to be crossed. Do you work with your clients to help them set their own boundaries? And is that something energetically we really need to do on a daily basis?
Yeah, I feel like if you say what you're interested in experiencing at the top of the day and what you're not interested in experiencing at the top of the day, it can kind of clear a lot of the crap out of the way.
So, like what?
Like, I'm not interested in getting caught in long conversations with people who are self-centered, but I wouldn't mind having one with someone who's quite lovely.
Oh, very simple. Very
Very
simple,
yeah.
straightforward.
Yeah. I also will call upon invisibility sometimes because I find that I can get drained quickly
Mm-hmm.
when I'm out and about. And so I'll say, make me
Mm-hmm.
invisible until I get home. Make me invisible until I get home. Make me invisible until I get home. And I'll like just pass people and miss things. And knock on wood, tends to work. But I do tell, I often tell clients too, like, if someone comes through, you don't want to talk to, you don't have to talk to them. And people have said no to their relatives. Like, I'm not ready yet.
I'm not ready yet. And then sometimes are the relatives not necessarily like they're still the people that they're potentially still the people that they were here on earth. So they may not have like sort of like advanced on the other side either. So
Yeah, or
they're
have
still full of their own stuff.
and they're like, no, you work through it first and then we can maybe circle back.
Then we'll connect. That's so interesting. You have so much to share and so much to give.
You're so sweet. Likewise.
Well, I mean, my personal opinion is that as we advance, like more is more. And so you're finding that it's not just connecting with the other side. It's not just doing medium work. There's so much more that's involved here. There's boundaries and working with nature and animals. And there's so much more to become interconnected. As you were saying, just to send, like, for instance, when you had the near-death experience and you're with your grandmother and you could see some blue light, but then center her so that she is still rooted as well. Those sorts of things, as you become more expanded, you understand the importance of those sort of things.
Yeah.
It's not so simple. I mean, it is simple, but it's not so simple.
Yeah. Oh, you put that so well. You said that way better than I could. Because it made me think about, like, I don't know, like, you're leaving for somewhere and you're like, okay, do I have some chapstick?
Yeah.
Like, did I remember to pack eye drops? Like, oh fuck, I didn't buy eye drops. Like, whatever the thing is that you're packing. And then I feel like just like those thoughts will come up. Sometimes feelings will come up, and you really can work with that energy in the moment, and it'll listen to you.
That's
Or somebody
beautiful.
will help you with it.
Right, exactly. And there's more assistance there than you actually know.
Yeah, and they want to help so badly.
Let's talk about that. They want to help so badly.
I don't know. So it's so funny. Sometimes I'll attract like waves of people going through similar things, and then I'll get a new wave, you know. But I mean, but love is a really common topic for readings. And you know, I've had clients come to me who feel like their grandparents on the other side might not approve of who they're with
Mhm.
now.
Mhm.
And they could care less, like, if they're a different religion or different than they thought they would be, or blah, 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 blah. Like, they just want them to be happy.
Mm.
That's something that comes through. Sometimes it'll be like an energetic loop that keeps happening that can kind of remind me of, like somebody who's always really hard on themselves, and they're hard on themselves because that was their internalized message as a kid. And then they'll leave a job to be less hard on themselves. And then they start a new job and they go right back into that pattern. And then like it'll sometimes show up as like pushing too hard to get the Tupperware top on, or like tightening, like all these sort of like side effect things that we do when we're upset. Like if you're, for some reason I'm obsessed with Orange Crush Zero right now, so I'll be like, oh, I don't want the fizz to leave, so I'm like, and then I go back and I'm like, oh, I can't open it, I fucked myself, you know. Anyway, and they're like, just please cool it, there is no rush. I get that a lot for people, like, you do not need to figure this all out today. We are trying to help you do this, and the more you try to squeeze it into compliance, the harder you're making it for us to like help lay the groundwork with you.
Wow. That's
Yeah.
beautiful.
Like, it's really good to not have all the answers, even though it can feel really naked.
Yeah, I want all the answers right now.
I know, me too. That's the annoying thing about, like, I feel like I can see things for other people. It's way harder to see it for myself. So I'm like, I'm very grateful for dreams. Yeah. And other
Patience.
practitioners.
You have such a beautiful spirit, and the messages you share, the readings, I can just tell are just really gorgeous and lovely sort of experiences for your clients. I'm
Oh,
sure
thank you.
they must walk away astounded
Thanks.
and enlivened as well. It's good to know that we're all part of something kind of amazing.
For sure.
Is there
Yeah.
anything you want to impart to your clients, or anything you'd love for the audience to hear?
I'm trying to think.
Do you get the downloads for the collective at all?
Sometimes I will. That's kind of a newer thing too, I'd say. I haven't really dived into that as much, but sometimes I will. Okay, so like right now, the feeling I'm getting is that there are historical figures on the other side who would like to help. And so I don't know if that's that, you know, for some people that could come into, you know, sort of a telepathic direct communication thing. For others, it could be randomly watching the History Channel and like Ellen, not Franklin, Eleanor
Eleanor.
Roosevelt, like things of, I don't know, for some reason I'm getting her right now as far as like how to navigate where we are. They're also pointing to Eastern Europe, that there might be some historical figures there that could be helpful. And then as I talk about that, I almost feel like a burning down the middle of my chest. So I don't know if there was something with like famine involved in it. I wish I knew more history. I don't know. I didn't really go to the best schools. No offense, Racine. We didn't really learn very much, but sometimes I have to do a bit of Googling to figure out what the fuck is going on. But
Right.
sometimes you can get a download and you can verify it quickly. Anyway, I don't know if I answered your question.
You
But
totally answered the question. It
Okay,
totally answered the question. I think that's really important, because you get these things that don't make sense to you. So you have to sort of allow it some space and time. And a
Yes.
lot can be verified. So allow that to happen as well. And we've had that previously also with another medium who actually passed. She was a home clearer, and she came across James Dean's girlfriend, who everybody said committed suicide, but she did not commit suicide. They've figured out that she was pregnant, and she was sort of allowed to die. So I'm just going to say that. because weird things happen in Hollywood. So she was sort of allowed to die so that she would not interfere with his career.
Oh, okay, I got you. I got
Yes.
what you're saying. I got you. Oh, that's fucked up.
And so
Oh,
she
I have
was stuck in
goosebumps
that
all over.
space until the medium house clearer happened to come across during a home clearing for a new owner. And she was still stuck in this space and could not pass. And she was so upset because her reputation as an actor, she was an actor from France, had been ruined. And everyone thought she committed suicide. And she's like, I didn't commit suicide. That's not what happened,
Yes.
but that she was helped along the way.
Yes.
But these things, Hollywood's anyway. But Hollywood's not always sparkle and glamour. I'll say that.
Mhm.
You've shared so much of yourself. I wanted just one more thing, which is how can we work with our telepathy to really connect?
That's a great question. Okay, yeah. So I think telepathy doesn't always have to be like direct words. Like if you think about, I don't know, if you're, I just got the image of like opening your locker and there's a lock combination and you're like, yes, do you remember the code? Cousin on the other side, like it might not be that, but then the cousin on the other side might like show you an address or something, and then within the address are the numbers, you know what I
Right.
mean? So it can be kind of a feeling. Or I had a moment of this the other day. I So I was hanging out with my neighbor and my son was eating dinner and I was getting him water, and I felt myself, I was about to bring it to him, and without realizing it, I handed it to her. And then we looked at each other and I was like, did you tell me to hand it to you? She's like, no, I thought it. And I was like,
Yeah.
oh, I got it. And then we did it. So it can kind of be like that. But then but I feel like this is the future personally. Like, I mean, I'm sure we'll still use words, but I think words are so limiting. They don't, like, even when I'm giving a reading, I'm like, there's not even enough word. There's not even a word that encompasses this, And so I think it's really, really trusting that you are getting downloads, you are getting messages. And I think it'll get more nuanced as it goes, because I don't know, like just now I got the image of like a rocket taking off. And like, I don't think we're doing that correctly. Like, I don't think we're going to like blast off really far into space. Like, I just like, no, that feels real masculine and outdated. Like, I think we could perhaps astrally travel or bilocate. Like, I just, it's probably some crazy higher level of consciousness that we can't even conceive of right now. And I feel like that this is the beginning part of it is trusting it.
Right.
I think something that a lot of people can relate to is we all speak telepathically with our animals. You know what they need. They know when you're upset. That's real. Or with babies before they have words, like that communication, you can feel like you're in a constant conversation with them, and that doesn't need to stop just because they're speaking. You can kind of trust it. Yeah. Also, I don't know. We have so much coming towards us right now as far as stimuli. We process way more than we needed to even 30 years ago. And so I think, here's another warning for the collective that I'm getting is like, so they're saying that the less resources someone has, the more susceptible they will be to getting sandblasted with information and not be able to focus on what's the most important in the moment, and that the privileged will be able to protect themselves from being sandblasted by information. Like, because the internet is so crazy and you can get stuck on it all day, or like we used to have one newspaper, now we have news 24 hours a day, like that kind of a thing. Like, and so I don't know, I wonder if they're saying that because a piece of telepathy can be when you've become grounded enough to then notice the nuance. But if it's in the middle of scrolling and responding to someone, and then it'll be harder to catch.
Interesting. So when you say resources, are they saying resources in the sense of information that's coming to us as a resource? So as you're just saying, like your scroll, I could probably go through 100 videos just scrolling for 5 minutes at night, but I'm not really receiving what I need to receive.
Yeah. And that the people who might be most at risk might be those who have less money, versus people with a lot of money might be more privy to the information and the message that this flood of media coming at us all the time is quite damaging.
Interesting.
And so they might put in protective measures, and it might work to their benefit for those with ill intentions to let other people with fewer
resources.
Resources, yeah, at hand to continue being flooded.
Okay.
That's a dark
I
thing I'm
totally get
feeling right
exactly
now.
what they're saying. So there's a control element here in the sense that if you have more resources, if you are sort of protected by those resources and you feel
Mhm.
more stable, you won't be as vulnerable to some of what will probably be some controlling information that's going to be emitted soon, if not already. It's already being done.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
that's really
And
interesting. So you
and
really gotta chill, really stay grounded, no matter
and
what your economic situation is.
yes, really chill and stay grounded no matter what your economic situation is. And
Hmm.
perhaps a way to get some power back is to take some breaks from being online
Hmm.
and sort of reconnect with nature, reconnect with community, and then be available for those moments that, are sort of like downloads or a telepathic message. Like it'll kind of pull you together in a magical way, the way we used to date before stupid swiping. You know what I mean? You used to
Right.
magically bump into someone and be like, wow, that was interesting. Sure. Now I think it still can kind of like ding, match and somebody is like meant to be or whatever. But I think we've lost faith in the moment.
Right, exactly. It's fascinating conversation, and
Oh my God, likewise.
I feel like that this last bit is extremely important for the collective.
Yeah.
So it's very easy to be distracted, honestly, no matter what your economic resource or
Mhm.
level might be,
Mhm.
but to remember that perhaps you are the economic resource.
Yeah.
So be good in that so you don't have to listen to everything. There's a lot coming is what my sense is.
Yeah. Yeah. What are you getting to as
Oh,
far as?
okay. Well, my sense is that a lot of AI is going to be difficult for people to, in general, in a massive way. It'll be difficult for us to grapple with it if we haven't, if we're, because some will fight, some will accept, some will wonder and be curious and be overwhelmed. Just like when you're listening to the news a lot, like it can become overwhelming. So,
Yeah.
like, I don't
Yeah.
listen to the news. My background's in journalism, but I'm like, I don't really know what's going on. I'm aware enough, but it's not pertaining to my daily existence like it used to.
Yeah.
So it's more that you need to be grounded in yourself because it's easy when you feel unstable. And I certainly have experienced this when you're economically unstable. It's very easy to get distracted or feel pulled by the impulse to create more economic resources. So and as the economy changes, which we're going through a lot of economic changes, there will be those it'll be easier to control people the more that their foundations get pulled out from underneath them.
Yeah.
So we have to stay grounded because there's going to be more poor than the rich. There always is,
Yeah.
but those who are more economically stable will not be as affected by the effects to control.
Yeah. Yeah.
I could be
Absolutely.
completely wrong, but
No,
that's
I'm
my
following
sense.
everything you're saying. That was really interesting in the piece about AI in it too, and like how that's gonna turn the dial up and down on certain
Hmm.
things.
Hmm.
Yeah, that's really I like adding that piece into it. That gave me goosebumps when you said that. I was like 100%. Yeah.
So when you're listening to this podcast and you're part of this audience, that's one of the messages is to empower yourself. And that's part of probably what you work with, Jensen. What we work with is to really stay grounded and understand and believe in yourselves and feel empowered by your own spirituality
Yeah,
and your own
absolutely.
connections.
Yeah, and that it's okay to say no.
Exactly.
Mhm.
Exactly. Okay, well, on that note, we will wrap this up. Please remember to like and subscribe the Soul Fam podcast. Please go on Instagram and go to Readings with Jensen
Mhm.
at Readings with Jensen. Please look her up at www.jensensmith.
Same way. Yeah, and it's Jensen with an O-N.
Okay, fabulous. Thank you so very much.
Thank you for having me. This was such a pleasure.